The man you see in the picture has been lost for 10 days in the desert, and what happened to him is unbelievable. His name is Mauro Prosperi, and he had 39 years old when he participated to the Sand Marathon in 1994. This parkour is described as one of the most difficult and most dangerous in the world, with heavy sandstorms, and this Olympic athlete gets lost for 10 whole days in the desert. And what happened to him, you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy. So, who was this guy, Mauro Prosperi, and how did he get lost? Prosperi is born July the 13th, 1955, in Rome, Italy. Growing up while doing some art studies, he changes his career completely and goes into the police academy, and after a few years and some training, he became an officer of the law under the Italian National Police. But then, how did he go all the way to the desert to get lost? Don't worry, we'll get there. Parallel to his police work, he was a big sports guy, and he was what you can call a pentathlon athlete, and he practices pentathlons regularly. Pentathlon is a group of 5 different sports combined into one challenge. The 5 different sports are fencing, swimming, horse riding, pistol shooting, and running. The athletes that practice this kind of sports are considered to be the strongest of the strongest athletes you can find out there. And all of that because of their physical capabilities, and Mauro's were completely exceptional, always looking to push his own boundaries every time. He looks always for a challenge where his physical capabilities and his mental abilities are tested. And as you know, the athletes of a high level, the mental abilities is as important as the physical capabilities. And in fact, one day in 1994, when Mauro was 39 years old, one of his friends that's an athlete as well tells him about this legendary parkour, the kind of parkour that you would do one in a lifetime. And as soon as Mauro knew about that, his blood started to boil, and he literally tells his friend that he will be participating in the next race with him. It's funny because what Mauro says he loves about marathons is that he loves being super in contact with nature. And oh boy, he's gonna be so close to this kind of nature you don't even know. He loves to discover new places with incredible views over the mountains, deserts, ice glaciers. And before that, he would always concentrate on one thing, which is winning. So he didn't have that much time to actually concentrate also on the sceneries, on the environment where he is actually. So this time he wanted to do it right and actually go just to appreciate the environment where he's at. So now he sees the opportunity he's got to go to the desert. But here in the desert, he will regret it. And here he says he discovered the sand marathons by chance. He was retired from pentathlons at the time, but from what his friend was telling him about the race, he started to train himself immediately after he knew he wanted to go. And so he started to train and run about 30 miles every day and drink less and less water to get his body habilitated to being dehydrated. He was never home. He was running all the time and almost not drinking water, and by doing that he was training his body to endure the desert. You have to know that the sand marathon is about 200 miles in 6 days in the Sahara of Morocco, and this race is known for its extreme dangerousness and wildness, to the point where every participant has to sign a waiver before the start saying where you wish to be buried if you die during the race.
Like every year in the spring, the Sultan Marathon des Sables sets up camp in the heart of the South Moroccan desert for a week-long foot race under extreme conditions, where contestants are required to be self-sufficient for their food. Coming from 49 countries, including China, New Zealand, Russia, and even Guatemala, 1,330 contestants, including 209 women, managed to come away with their race number at the end of the checkup day, which for the first time includes fitting a GPS tracker to all backpacks.
Would you participate in a race where you have to sign a waiver on your life with your wish on where you want to get buried? I don't think so, buddy. Not me. No. In the Sahara, as you know, can have temperatures that rise up so quick. The athletes have to be self-sufficient on themselves, and they have to transport their own food and equipment as well. The assistants that assist the race are just there to put food and water, I think, at checkpoints of the races, and then the athletes has to do the rest on their own. And you have to know that water is the base to everything. So they have a quota for everybody. And if an athlete goes overboard and gets more water than he should, they lose some time. And also there's only around 47% of the runners that finishes the race. So more than half don't. We're at a race of almost 6 marathons with a desert at 100 degrees at best during the day. The race is tough. And today, this marathon has more than 1,300 participants, and every runner is equipped with a GPS and a helicopter to surveil their trajectory for every person. But when Mauro participated in 1994, there were only 80, and at the time, the organization didn't have enough funds, so they didn't have a GPS on every runner. It was wild back then in the day, but they had so much courage though. And at the time, Mauro's wife was very preoccupied with him about the race especially. And what he said to her before all of the race, you would never guess. He tells her, oh, the best I can get is a sunburn, and that's it. He was crazy. And now it is the time for the race. And Mauro goes to Morocco and starts to get ready for the race. And as it starts, everything was going smoothly. Very smoothly even the first days. Mauro was always the first Italian to get to the checkpoints, and he would wait for his friends to get there, and throughout the days he was going fast and very steady, the very first in front of all of his friends. And then on the 4th day, you have to know that the 4th day is going to be the longest, with approximately 75 miles to walk in the desert. We are the 14th April 1994, and the sun is shining and the temperatures are close to 110 degrees during the day. Mauro passes the 3rd checkpoint and loses a bit of his water when he falls on the ground, but still continues the race. Then around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, strong winds started to rise up. Winds so strong that it provoked a sandstorm out of the blur, and that forced the organization of the race to pause the race for a day. Some of the athletes get actually to the 4th point by night, but Mauro is not there, and he's not to be found anymore. During the morning, there was a little bit of wind, but then as throughout the day, at some point, he entered a zone of dunes, and suddenly the wind picked up and a violent sandstorm started. He was literally terrified by a wall of sand right in front of him. He couldn't see, he couldn't breathe, and he felt that the sand coming on his face felt like little needles. And with some courage, he turns his face, he crawls over, he puts something on his face to kind of protect his face from the sand, and then he starts to crawl towards the direction of a little like rock formation or something that can actually protect him a little bit from the wind. And so that's what he did, and he stayed crawling in that little place for about 8 hours until the sandstorm actually calms down. After that, he thinks of going to go get some help, but he was disorientated. And what does he see in front of him? The sand absolutely covered everything in front of him, and what looked like before doesn't look like right now. It looks completely different with that sandstorm. So he asks himself, did I get teleported? Hell no. So for 4 hours he was trying to find his way, but nothing. He couldn't find his way. He couldn't recognize nothing, no scenery, no nothing. And at this point, 2 helicopters fly by him twice and nothing. They didn't even see the head signs that he was doing to them, no nothing. And he was screaming at them even, but nothing. They didn't even see him. A plane goes by. He puts on his flare on and even his backpack on fire to get their attention, but nothing. So he destroys everything he had and still no one saw him. Could you imagine the stress from that? Hey, he also said, as he saw the plane flying away, he was like, this is my life. This is where I will die. But still, he decided to store his urine in the water bottle. He also had a compass and sleeping bag with some leftover food. Dehydrated and clearly miserable, he clearly sees that he's lost. So the first thing he does to preserve himself, he started to ratio all of his urine to drink later and also the food that he still got. You must know that when you're hydrated and you urine, that urine is actually clear and drinkable in a way. And he also remembered that his grandpa told him about when he was at war and him and his buddies during the war had to drink urine so that they can stay alive during the war. And now it's been 4 days in the desert and he discovers something. He sees a Marabu sanctuary in the desert, an ancient building that serves as a tomb. So he could use this place as a refuge from the sun and get some shade actually. He also notices that it had a bunch of bats. He will catch some of them and drink their blood. Normal. It's usually the other way around, right? So he grabs himself a handful of bats, snaps their head, and sucks the blood out of them.
That's weird.
Damn, that is disgusting though. But you gotta think about survive at that point. And in his place, how long would you have lasted without a drink in the desert? He had almost 20 bats, and after many days of suffering, Mauro started to write a letter to his wife on the wall of the tomb, saying how much he loved his wife and everything. And then he actually even thought about killing himself, but he couldn't actually do it. So he was just laying in there, just waiting for his time to go, for his time to die. But nothing. He was still alive and breathing and kicking. And that's until he couldn't take it anymore. And with a breath of courage, he wakes up with determination and realizes that the marathon is still ongoing. And just with that thought, he had some girth to kind of keep on going. So he decided to face the desert by himself. He decided to go to war with the desert. Him versus the nature. Then Mauro started to walk again. He started to chase snakes and different kind of insects so that he can feed himself and keep on going and get his proteins. And then at night he will cover himself in the sand actually to keep himself warm, because you have to know in the desert when it's daylight, yes, it's very hot, but then during the night very cold as well. Like it gets close to the 0 degrees at night, so you have to keep yourself warm at some point. So he would cover himself in the sand and he would chase lizards and eat them alive so that he can drink from them as well. And at day number 8, he discovers an oasis with a lot of water, so he decides to go and drink from it. He drinks the most he can before going back on his feet, and after a few miles, Mauro will start to fall. And far from him, he sees a shepherd. He approaches him, and the shepherd brings him to the village and welcomes him greatly. They notice that he is doing a marathon due to his clothing, and they took great care of him. They gave him goat milk and mint tea, and with their help, he was able to survive. He finally removes his bandana, and he sees that he went off track by like 150 miles. Mauro now is 100 pounds, and he finds himself in Algeria, very far from Morocco. Just to let you know how far he went, he literally crossed to another country. He's crazy, I swear to God. In there, he goes to the hospital, gets fixed up, and goes back home to Italy. He was extremely dehydrated and sunburnt everywhere. He also had problems with his stomach because of everything he ate, because I'm guessing that eating bats and lizards is okay, huh? And you think that the story ends there? No. Mauro was crazy. He was like, I'm not done yet. I didn't finish the race. So guess what he did? 2 years later, he went back to the race to finish it, to have his revenge. Swear to God, he's crazy. He had a weird taste in the mouth of unfinished race that he absolutely had to go and finish. So 2 years later, as I said, he went back, did it again, and actually finished the race. And after finishing that race, guess what he did? He came back 6 more times to do the same race again, and he finished them all. He loved that race so much. This was the story of somebody completely crazy and incredible at the same time. I love this. You go, you get lost in the desert, you drink bad bloods, eat lizards for a few days. That's awesome.
Okay.
Let me know how you think about this video down in the comments below. This was your guy, the Good Chino. Peace.